Nā reira, te tikanga mō tēnei o nā kaupapa, kai te kōrero ngātahi, kai te whiriwhiri whakaaro, a Waiharoi, Dr. Phyllis Callaghan, e pāna ki te kaupapa o tō tātanei hui. Hara ko tēnā te tuituinga o tātanei muka i roto i nā hapori nei. Nā reira, kua whakaritinga nā mea papaho. So we've got 2 mics that are available for questions, pātai. And for anyone that has any burning desire to whittle and to talk to our panellists. I believe the third one is still coming, that's whaia tihi puanaki, te kai kōrero tuatoru. Awai, a papahinari. Nā reira, kia tīmata rea nei tēnei o nā kōrero, i pāne ki tēnei panel me ki, ka tahuri ki te reo parawa nei. So we are having our first panel discussion, our first and only panel discussion for our hui, along with our esteemed kai kōrero, who have spoken at various points already within our hui. And this is an opportunity for you to pātai, to voice your thoughts or whakaaro in regards to our kaupapa of our hui. It's really awesome to see how patron this event has been. This is my first tui in a very long time and just got given this mahi by default. Nā reira, ai, ka tuku atu ki tō tātanei kai kōrero, mō tēnei ahi. Hapai, nā reira, homa te paki mō tō tātanei kai kōrero.
Kia ora tātou. At the moment, we're on the edge of a change in education in terms of qualifications with the review of NCA. So, he pātai ki a koutou katoa, how would you change, if you had the power, how would you change NCA to ensure our language is still being honoured and our Māori students will, like as Mere said this morning, achieve as Māori? You had the power to change NCA, what would you do?
When I was teaching to exams, right, and I was still in the school C, and then the NCA came in, and I really did get lost, te koutou. Took a wrong turn, no? Like many wrong turns in my life, I don't know. And I was always uncomfortable with exams. So I used to often get in trouble with my management, and Mere talked about these sort of things and whoever through the whole conference, because I believed in learning for learning's sake. And I still think that there's not much room for that tātou in the education system. And so I was there to teach people to kōrero Māori, to speak Māori. So I had my own method of teaching, and I would like to say that I got people talking Māori, as opposed to people passing exams, And so the philosophical stuff these days, people are tending to say, don't teach to an exam. But when I found, 2 qualifications, when I found when NCA came in, I was one of those that was against it, because it was dumbing down. I felt it was dumbing down. Many of you, the older ones, may be aware of all these arguments of the dumbing down of the learning. And then there's also the scenario of we started to shop around for credits that didn't require much time and much work, and we still do it now. And so with the changes, I haven't got an alternative, but right? So I had that gut thing in me. And then I went to university and did some studies in education. And then I learned about meritocracy and all those sorts of things. And then I went, ping! I understood why I didn't agree with the qualification system. Didn't know what I was going to do about it because I was stuck in that system. And so we are measured by our passes. And at least in my kaupapa, I ran a rumaki, bilingual. Everything you were asking, if I can be whakahihi, we've done. And somebody said, we're done. So we had kapahaka, timetabled, and assessed, and evaluated, and all those sorts of things. But, and so our own kaupapa, staff of 9, we were there to essentially, cause te rereketanga o te waipaunamu, aroha mai waku hoai no reira, was te nui o te wā koto mahi e whakaako i ngā tamariki ki a Māori rātou. So that was part of our whole package. You had your curriculum stuff, and then also from our activities, we were bringing them into a Māori world. And so we were happy, and I was hot on manu kōrero, and the functions. There's something we need to, there's a long story. I won't go down there. But I was hot on that. I had a program on how to bring in manu kōrero so that every Māori child that I had an opportunity to debate and think and talk, and they liked it, eh? They liked that where there's a danger where we select kids to actually be the speakers. And so our emphasis was that we were breeding Māori kids who were comfortable as Māori, knew what to do in a Māori situation. So my haka goals, kapahaka, is my life, like those boys were saying, but that they could get up and utilize those skills that they were learning in kapahaka so they could eventually, ultimately, run a hui and do all the roles, which they did. I'm proud to say that. And I believe for us, kapahaka was our vehicle. And so, long answer, hone. And so, my emphasis wasn't so much on the exams. And yet, I was proud that we got kids, all the young leaders in Christchurch, Māoridom, they're from our school. They came from us. They all haka people. They're all educated. And so even if their education came later, their qualifications came later. So I'm for no NCA. I'm for no NCA. I haven't thought about an alternative. Yeah, I don't know if I'm saying go back to school C, but something in there needs to be done so that learning, and because I acknowledge that our kids, because we debated in our mahi whether we were going to have the exams or not. You have those debates, those situations now. And then my staff were against. They thought, don't have the exams. So we had the internal stuff, how you rearrange stuff. And then we started to examine our kids. And we know the debates, the argument about sitting kids down to examine, to sit in an exam. But how bloomin' Māori kids, they got motivated. My kids were pretty rugged. So I actually say that with pride. And so when some of you talk about the kids, and think of those of you I better be careful when I say here, in good schools with kids that are, because every child is valued. I'm going to be careful here. I absolutely valued these children, but they were challenging, and we rose to the challenges, and we did get successes. And so the variety, somebody might want to discuss what success is, a variety of forms of success. So I'm against qualification, how the focus on qualification, but I do acknowledge that something needs to be in there. But maybe our academic can talk about meritocracy. When I learned what that was, I thought, wow. And it's actually not good, but we're bound. Hey, we're bound in this, this society where it's on merit, blah, blah, blah. She can do the theory of that. So, koe tēnā taku whakautu. It's a long story, but it took a long time for me to get there. Because the danger, and there's some experienced, very, very experienced people in here, is that we just teach to the exam. We're teaching to, and the joy of learning. So I've had that attitude for yonks ever since. And I didn't really understand it until I went to do some studies. And so the joy of learning is lost. I love kids, yeah. When Mere showed the photo of the kids like that used to be my spark. When I see a kid going there, I go, right, yeah. And then I'm sure with many of us, and I'd work my lessons so that the spark, that look is gone and I get a spark. And so I used to say, ooh, if I got Johnny Waititi in my class. And he's like this. I thought my class had succeeded when Johnny Waititi's eyes sparked up. So big question, and koe tēnā big answer. So ka mihi nui, and yeah. So I'm not giving you an alternative, but I'm saying for my reasons, yeah. Yeah, I say scrub it. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora tātou. Oh, I just heard my voice. I would really love to pose this question to our esteemed panel. He laughs. I was serious. I worry about our hapori Māori. There's, when I get back home and I go around different parts of the mutu, and I see a lot of poverty. I see a lot of what used to be the state of the houses when we were children at Auahau. That was a long time ago, and I see we actually gone back to a lot of how, we thought, our parents thought we had progressed by getting a Māori affairs home when we were children and moving out of the pā. And then I noticed that a lot of that poverty that we knew as children and no wharepaku and no water is back. And I wonder about the cultural and the spiritual, as well as the physical sustenance of a lot of our Māori communities. I just wonder, because when poverty hits that hard over a couple of generations, a lot of our āhuatanga Māori, those beautiful tikanga values Māori, somehow are almost foreign to a lot of our whānau. And I'm not talking about a scenario. I'm talking about, relations who are cousins, nieces whose mothers are my sisters. And so how do we make sure, because when the physical sustenance isn't there and the whare isn't warm and it's cracked, I've had people come home and been in disbelief when they realise that my cousin and her whānau live in the whare that we're walking past. They really are shocked. And so we've gone back a lot. And when that happens, the relationships become less loving. I suppose a dysfunction sometimes. So I'd be really interested, how do we try and lift our hapori Māori? Kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koe mākau. By every measure, today, I grew up poor. Except that I never knew it. I never knew that we were poor. Because I never went hungry. I never went without clothes. The fire was always burning, even if it was a wood stove. And as you say, the house was always warm. It's funny that after all these years, when I have an opportunity to go back into our old house, which my nephew now lives in, it's still the same house, but somehow it's not as warm as it used to be, as I remembered it to be. So, on a whānau basis, we're faced with a challenge with our whānau saying it is time to change. It is time to knock down the old house. Don't keep trying to survive in it just because you can't, I don't know that you can't be bothered, but just because it's there. And many of our families are accepting things because they are there. Te hoki anō ki runga i o tātou whenua. That's a big driver. Te mate ke, there's nothing to sustain us when we go home. In my time, 10 cows could keep my mother going with no matter how many kids in the house. We sent a can of cream every morning, and once a month we got a cream check. And every fortnight my father would come back from the railways and he'd bring a wage packet from which he extracted 10 pounds, and then he threw the rest at the old lady, which was probably about 20 pounds in those days. And my mother brought us all up on those, and the family benefit and all those things that have gone missing these days. So I think, because it's a long time since we had some kids. E mōhio nāu, koe rā te tohu nui, kei te pōharatia tō tātou iwi. And, you know, some of us might say, yeah, well, poverty might be a state of mind. But it isn't when you're shivering cold. And it isn't a state of mind when you don't want to go to school because you're a bit tare to turn up amongst a whole lot of other children who aren't as tare as you. Although sometimes I look at my mokopuna's clothes and they like them when they're ripped. I said, I'd never go out in something like that. I'd sit down. If my mother sent me out in the pants that was ripped, I'd sit down and I'd cry until she sewed it up. But, you know, my mokopuna, they love those kind of things. Yeah, neither. So I don't know whether it's got anything to do with trying to look poor. All these well-off people want to look poor, and the poor people, I wā rātou anō, we can't help the way we look. And he ua when, you know, I'm trying to make light of something that's obviously you all face in a classroom, because that's how they turn up to you. That's the thing you got to deal with before you got to start teaching. And how do you, that's the real deficit, I suppose, I te mutunga. You know, how do we get past that in order to do the thing that I felt I came here to do, mua tātou tamariki. In another lifetime, I was a Māori community officer. One of the worst things I believe that they did when they got rid of Māori affairs was got rid of their community workers, because we knew our communities. We knew where the problems lay, and we went straight there. If you asked me who was struggling in Pukekohe, I could tell you who was struggling in Pukekohe in those days. And you went there, and it wasn't a matter of fixing. I remember getting called out and you couldn't walk into the house. I mean, the house hit you the moment you opened the door. And we went back and said, you know, me pēhea tai ai te mahi me tēnei whānau. And another fellow used to look a little bit like me, my uncle Nau. He said, the first thing you do is you go in there and you fellas clean the house up. And so we went there and we just got big hoses and we just hosed the place down. We threw everything out. And that was the first thing, because they couldn't see beyond that. You threw everything out, hosed it down, then went to John de Paul and Waiatu and Waiatu. You knew where to go. And we had the place refurnished in half a day. Well, no, 2 days maybe. Kei teka hoki au. After a couple of days, and they went on. In fact, because because I got a ring just before I came back here from the daughter of one of those people, thanking me for something I did last week. Years after that time. And that was part of the work of being part of the community. Ye rara. So they got rid of Māori affairs, they got rid of their community. Now the government is not in touch with the people. Māori affairs officers, we were called Māori elsewhere officers because we always seem to be elsewhere. The people, the people don't pussy around when they call you something. So the Māori welfare officers were always known as the Māori elsewhere officers. If you want one, he's always somewhere else. It was one of those services that existed, and we put people into homes. When we handled Māori housing, people could afford housing. And they called it Ronei koe for Māori affairs housing. They took it away because somebody felt like we had an advantage. And that was the reason why Māori housing disappeared, because it was felt that you had an advantage over everybody else. And you could get loans that nobody else could get. And that the reality was you got the same loan, you had people working with you, and then you worked out a scheme by which you were able to handle repaying that loan. And they weren't the flashiest houses in the world, easy, but they were warm, they were comfortable, and more than that, the people owned them. And all of that went out the door because they believed by being the same as everybody else, you were going to get better service. Well, we know right now our people can't even get on the first rung anymore. So I look back to those things and say, kei reira te pōharatanga o te iwi. The system turned on itself, and in its search to get everybody on the same train, bus, whatever it was they thought we all had to be on, they made everybody walk. And most of them walking backwards. So, ka titiro ana ka arohana ki tō tātou iwi. I was going to come up here and start my talk today talking about this thing here. There's a little community, well, I don't come from it. I went there a little while to Pipiwai. How many people from Pipiwai here? Pipiwai, those of you who don't know, is the stronghold of Mormonism. I roto i Ngāti Hine. When the church first was established in Pipiwai, they went out and they had an old rickety church, which they hauled down there by horse, and that's where they went to worship. Then after a while, they wanted a new church. Trouble was, all the Mormons didn't know how to build. The only people who knew how to build were all the Anglicans and the Catholics. So the Anglicans and the Catholics got together and said, we will build your church. One rule: if we want to smoke, we're going to smoke. So the Pipiwai Mormon church was built by smokers. But that was community at work. That's what I wanted to say. That's community as I knew it. So they didn't matter what the rules were, they changed them to suit themselves. And then they got on with the job. I think we've lost a lot of that capacity to look at what is in front of us, know what it is we want to do, change the rules to fit what we want to, what the outcome ought to be, and then go on with it. Johnny, te whakautu ki tō pātai, well, I was never ever a hot shot at exams. You can ask Gary Wilson. He was responsible for my English tutelage at Form 3. And then he was so shocked at my incapacity to handle his subject, he left teaching. Because he'd finally run into a wall, and it was me, and he went over, he even got out the country. And he couldn't go far enough, he went to Canada. And then years later, he came back and messed my life up a second time. when he tried to turn me into a journalist. The first thing he did when he came back, I was working for Māori Affairs. I was getting good pay. And he was running journalism school in Auckland, and he said, "You should be a journalist." And I laughed at him. And I said, "Not with this pay, I'm not." How much does a journalist get? It's not about the money, eh, Tāna? But I'm happy to stand here today and credit a lot of my capacity to communicate to this Pākehā fellow with a beard that looks like mine sitting in the back row, sitting in the middle row here. And that's an easy thing for me to say. Because he was one of the first people who said, if you want to write good, you write the way you talk. And now reo is the same way. If you want to learn to speak Māori well, hey, you speak it so that it's simple, so that it's clear, so that the other person understands you. Too many times I see people carrying our reo all over the place, and the only people who understand them is the fellow that's talking. You know, and you wonder, am I in the right house? Nōku rānei tēnei reo? You know, and sometimes we lose the simplicity and the beauty o tō tātou reo. And the long answer mo te wāhi o te NCEA nei ki tō tātou reo. Well, I already made my declaration yesterday. Throw the school books out. Hey, hoki ki te whakaako, ki te whakarongo, ki te titiro, ki te kōrero. Koe nā ngā mātā pono I ako nai tēnei whakatupuranga ki te reo nei. Now, I don't know how you're going to magically do that, because that's a hard push. But if we want it to stick, then everything's got to work back to that. I don't know that you can do it all in one big jump, but if it means that koe rā te huarahi, koe rā te huarahi. I suppose just as an ending comment, one of the things I remember from my days as a community officer was coming to a realization that our houses were no longer our homes, where one time we could enter each other's homes, and our parents never worried where we were. And as I went and worked in towns and places like that, like in Auckland, you know, my own relatives who lived just down the road saw me less than when we used to live at home and be some distance apart. And we'd only see each other when we went back home. Not in Auckland, only when we went back to Matawaya would we meet up. Because while we were in Auckland, we were too busy being ourselves. And so those homes, those houses were no longer the homes of the people you knew and the people you grew up with. And arohana, because we've done it to ourselves in many ways. We've disconnected ourselves from the things that make us who we are. And te nuinga o ngā raruraru, o enei rā is disconnection. I believe koe rā te is one of the things that we're no longer connected to the things that made us, that empowered us. When others were weaker, you could associate with the ones who could help you through. And you knew where to turn to. And you knew who to go to. Me ana tēnei when we were having tea last night, you know, recalling her mother who said, "You having trouble at that school? Ring Wasi up. Ring Niwa, ring." And that's the way they operated. They didn't matter you were in Christchurch and Wasi was way up in Kaitaia. Ring him. That was their way of dealing with it. They valued those kinds of networks, and I think, you know, we got to rediscover that. And why I said to the lot, I said what I said this morning, you are the frontliners. And if you don't need extra burdens, but if you're going to have another one, you know, you're our front line out there, I roto i ngā hapori. You are the center of the Māori world of our children i ngā kura nei. Because without you, There is nobody else there. Oh, well, there are people there. It's wrong to say that the others don't. Yeah. But they're natural. They naturally gravitate to you. We got to find ways of raising the kinds of support that you need. So mea he mana kei roto I tēnei hui huinga. It's really the one that gets you the support that you need to be who you are. The best representatives our children have on a day-to-day basis. You become that person they identify with, as I still do. Took me a long time to call that Pākehā at the back there Gary, because he was still Sir. You know? My principal, I tīpene, never ever called him Joe, not to his face anyway. You know? E pērā te āhua. And I don't believe it's any different koutou and koutou e noho nei. You are the faces of what I used to see. No reira, I runga I era. That's an even longer answer to an even shorter question.
I tono au kia Dr. Phil, kia whai a kia kōrero hau mo te wāpoto, and then she can theorise, she can do the theory. But we need to answer the question. And the question was, and I got some answers on that. You said about te pōharatanga o a tātou tamariki. Well, first thing, you can't teach kids who are hungry and tired and all that, eh? So our schools need strategies in there to support you with that. You can't be the counsellor, you can't be the social worker. You know, you tried that for years, you can't teach effectively and do that. So I thought I wanted to say that. And I liked what, so this is Dr. Phil, must be Mr. Phil, the Tanatane. I liked what he said when he said, you got to watch their back. We watch their backs. And I know there's some issues, and I remember listening to some of you a couple of years ago, and I was surprised, pea, te kōrero, of the tenor of the kōrero, how you were talking processes and who's got to do this and do that. I thought, well, that was interesting, but I just couldn't keep quiet, and I said, well, I don't agree with you, but anyway, it was a lesson for me in learning that things change, but I think ultimately or essentially Māori don't change. I found a Māori is a Māori wherever they are. I've been in the South Island, and you say you're different depending on where, or what the iwi is or whatever, but essentially a Māori is a Māori. And I'll debate that with anyone. I've done studies in Waiata and Motuhake, and that's some evidence in there. And our kids up home and down south and all that. And so I think we need to remind ourselves that, and I think that's been hammered the past few days about what we're teaching, how we're teaching. You've just been told that you are the role model or whatever. But those kids that are pohara, I also wanted to say that you know, and hopefully you'll know this, that there's a stigma of poverty, eh? That you get a child that comes and the kids talk about them. The kids will say, hey, they're poor, they've got no teeth, stink, or whatever, you know, those things. So how do we handle those? That's rhetorical, I'll leave that there. How do you handle poverty? You know, how do we handle poverty? And you go in the street and you see whanaunga sitting there, whanaunga of people, not necessarily whanaunga, sitting there with their container for their money. What do you do? Yeah, what do you do? You know what I do? I'd go the other way. But you know why? I don't know how to handle it. I want to give them some money or take them home to my house. And also if they're my relations, there's one there, his relation too, and ka mea tau, ka kōrero ma mea tau, ana koe kona, me haere tātou te whare. He's chosen to be there. And so I was advised by Brenda Lowe, there's this woman who sleeps in the car, goes out on the streets at night so she can tell, and to sleep with them and all that, so she can tell people about them, blah, 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 long story there. And she said, don't give them money. She said in a good way, she said, one thing to you, don't give them money. And she said, maybe give them some kai. And don't take them to your bloody house, you can't have the whole lot there. She said, just be friendly to them. Yeah. And so back to us in the classroom. when those kids come and they're hungry and they're pohara, there is a stigma there. So I'm going to leave that one. How do you handle the stigma? How do we handle our own attitudes? You know, when you're brought up, he's giving an idea of how we brought up. A lot of us are brought up. And I remember my mother saying, you know, living in Otara, and go, yeah, those bloody coconuts down the road there, aroha mai, to tātou tungane. And I'm going, hey, the mokopunas will hear you, or whatever. But my issue there is attitudes, inborn attitudes that we have, and how are you going to handle it? Are you going to be the support person for that kid? That kid actually needs us. And then the other thing that's been bugging me recently is, I've been in these blooming ngapuhis down there, and we all think that our kids are needy. What about the good kids? And I was starting to say, hey, your application, you're actually saying, oh yeah, we need this, these kids need that. What about the good kids too as well? And so we're so, what's that Pākehā word? Deficit. You know, sometimes we're driven by deficit, so we need to be careful of that as teachers. I had good kids, and man, you talk expectations, and I had expectations to the point, whānau, I started to feel I had too many expectations, too much, because I was putting pressure on them that they had enough pressures at home. So are those things in your life now, are they still there? I'm assuming they are. Some of you are nodding, I'm assuming they are. How do we handle them? Firstly, again, because you asked the question, the stigma of poverty, how do we handle that? How do you handle that? Or we think, yeah, I got bloomin' relations that say, down the road there, bloomin' pohara. Come on. You fellas aren't nodding either, but it's there. And that's that one, and they think you can't teach them, eh? So what are you going to do? So if a kid comes doped out to you, or to the haurangi in your class, to the school, and are you going to go and take them, march them straight up, or are you going to sober them up first? Have you got a little room at the back where you can sober them up and just have a blanket there or whatever? Endless questions, no answers. You got your own answers, but I will just lay those out. We've been doing it for a long time. Those issues will be around a long time, and so let's just find some answers. Find your own answers, get support here, and thank you for the question. Kia ora, and we're going to pass you out to the academic now.
I hope you don't mind sitting down. In question to the how to get rid of poharatana, maybe it's make it a methodology, maybe make it part of pedagogy, maybe make it part so that when your students come in, the poharatana is not such a bad thing. It can be a positive thing. I spoke about in my PowerPoint, it's about how do you turn negative codes into positive codes. And so maybe we take our poharatana and we make it positive and we make it beneficial and we start getting our kids to look at equity and issues around poharatana and we start making them become active participants of our curriculum. So maybe, I don't know, they might design an app about if you're pohara where you might be able to get clothing. So we develop, I heard someone say that education is moving all the time. So what about taking poharatanga into app making? What about taking poharatanga into web design? There's ways of making things innovative and there's ways of bringing things into our methodologies. Hey, maybe we need to change our concepts, how we're seeing things. And Johnny, in question to the NCA, I don't think in this country, in our education system, we make the most of our codified ways of knowing. That might be maraitana, that might be Māoritana, that might be gangtana, that might be poharatana. But these students, Māori students, Pacific Island students, grow up inside of a culture. Every day they see a metaphor. Every day they see an adjective. Every day they see imagery. Every day they see symbols. So what's happening when they get to that classroom? For example, if I come from a gang home, I know what metaphors are because my father speaks about them every day. But in a gang lifestyle, am I being excluded when I walk into your English class? Can I bring that gang lifestyle through creative writing? Can I bring it through research? Can I bring my poharatana through a piece of creative writing? Man, that's a real abstract piece of writing if you think about poharatana, an abstract thought. So these things which we could be redesigning, making better use of students' codified ways of knowing. And remember, not all our students are kei reira with Māoritana. There's a lot that have been disenfranchised, that have been hurt by the system, that are suffering severe levels of trauma. So my question would be, how can they have intrinsic, the ministry catchphrase is intrinsic, motivation and agency. But how can I have those two things if I'm not valued or I don't have a knowledge base when I come into your classroom? So perhaps in redesigning the education system in NCEA, maybe at year 9, it's about really knowing what the student wants to do and then creating a framework for them from year 9, year 10, year 11, year 12, year 13, so they've got that knowledge base there. So all throughout their high school learning, they're learning those concepts, maybe do away with some other subjects. I hear time and time again when students get out into the workforce, oh, miss, I don't know why they taught me Shakespeare at school. We don't bloody do that in my job. Oh, sorry, boss, I know you're a lover of Shakespeare. But these things, maybe if they're going to be trades, then that's what they do from year 9. They get everything they need to know about trades, and maybe someone might say, oh, but that's a bit short on the curriculum. Well, teach them how to make apps. Teach them how to take their trades and go forward into the technological age, because we are fast approaching that age, and so many of our tauira, if we're having so many issues back here for Māori students, how are they going to catch the technological bus? You know, we're being told to get our act together here, but yet the technological bus is taking off over here. I'm hearing all these kupu coming out about coding, which is the whole technological gaming and stuff and robots. But how many students in your school know about coding? How many of them are practicing coding? And yet we're being told if we don't get on board the bus is going to leave us well and truly behind. So I think in terms of the NCA, it definitely isn't working. We are still underachieving. Māori students still have the highest rate of underachievement, especially in Aoraki Kura. So what might that look like if we redesigned that and we established our students' knowledge base first? What do they know? What are they good at? Maybe it's the schooling system that needs to change. Maybe we need to be looking at it from the student's perspective instead of looking at it from the kaiako or management perspective. So what do you come with into my classroom, and how am I going to value that, and how am I going to take that knowledge, mix it in with a bit of technology, and allow you to set sail upon the world? Ne? So, koe nā oku whakaharo? Boss, aku oku. Ne?
As I was listening to Phyllis, you know, I kind of cast my mind back to how I became a crappy maths student. When I went to Tipene, I was pretty hot shot at arithmetic. Tipene taught me how to hate maths. I can, you know, mahara nau, ka haere ki te kura, you walk in the classroom and then you did the 2 1s, 2, you know the tune. You know the tune, the words always sort of escape you. And I was a cracker at that. Like I could do my 12 timetable before I got out of standard 2. And at Matawai, that was a hell of an achievement. And then, you know, you did this thing, mahara now, called mental arithmetic. So they gave you a whole lot of numbers and you just sort of tinkled them up in your head. I still do it when I go shopping. And the people at the shop are still adding it up on the machine. Here's the money. Still good at that. Until I got to Tipene, and then we started learning about all these other things called algebra and trigonometry and logarithms. I reira tonu, ka ngaroau. So by the time I got to the 6th one, I actually got school certificate maths, 48. But in those days, you didn't have to get 50. You only had to get 200. So, all about NCEA. We knew what the target was. And it didn't matter whether you got 201 or you got 296. 201 was enough. But, you know, by the time I got to the sixth form, this maths thing had gone right out of the roof. So I left the sixth form, the second time around. It's good to go back to there sometimes. You know, and I ditched maths because when I had to sit UE maths, me and Caveman Rogers, and that was a real student, Caveman Rogers, we went to Pukekohe to sit our maths exam because we weren't allowed to do it at Chipene. There weren't enough of us. And we got in there, did all the multiple choice, and then we walked out and went downtown to play piriote. But there you go, that's a whole nother story. But as a result of that, I have my mother kept my UE results from that year, which showed that I had a maths mark of 3%, which only meant that I got 3 out of 20 for the multiple choice. That's how bad luck can get. But hey, tahi wā, you get to think about things like that, and you worry that that's the experience of some of our children. That they go there with willing minds at the tīmatanga and then get it ground out of them. Because I certainly got the maths, but lucky I had the reo, because that was the one that went up into the 90s that carried you over the 207. But aha koano, you know, ka mahara ke koe, what is it that, you know, that our children are constantly facing under those kind of examination? Now, when, as far as the reo is concerned, ko te tino hia ke, kia mau ia rātou, me pēhea te whakatako tō kōrero. How do I say the things that are on my mind, I roto I te reo nei? And it's, you know, it is a simple language. I te mutunga. I was saying to somebody, how, you know how we sing hymns. And my favorite is Tamangākau Mārie, and people sing that hymn and then they go to the second verse and then they sing the first verse again just so they can finish early. All the Anglicans do it now. And what they lose is that the verses with the best words are the ones you leave out. There's some great messages in those verses that you leave out. Takahia te kino. What if? Takahia te kino. Okay, or something. You know? Eh? Puta i te pauri whiwhi hari nui. What a great saying. Puta i te pauri whiwhi hari nui. And that you're willing to throw it away and never sing it again. You know, get through the sorrow and there's great reward. What a great thing to say to somebody in that situation, I roto I te reo. But we take those samplers and we throw them away. And yet we'll get up and we'll try to win the choral at Matatini. And then we sing the songs and we wonder how much, in fact, does the words sit in your heart and your mind. And koeira the gift of reo, kia, that we often discard. So it's just very easy as that. Those words are still in the old Rawiri. The Church of England gone and changed their liturgy, and I don't even go to, when I go to church, I'm all mixed up now because they changed it around. They don't do it the way we used to do it. And ko ngā kupu, that's what you miss, the way it was recited. So he taonga nui kei roto i ngā tauiratanga o tō tātou reo in the old school of communicating. I'm going to do the whole waiter from now on. Thank you.
Kia ora, my name is Cameron and I teach at Avondale College in Auckland. My question is for Dr. Phyllis. Just in terms of further study, how important is it in today's day and age? And in terms of pros and cons, and what would your advice be to people in this room who want to pursue further study, but they're working full time, they have a family as well, in terms of managing that?
Kia ora. My advice in the first instance is never ever undervalue what you bring to the table. So if it's te reo, if it's culture, if it's indigenous, whatever it is, bring it to the table and fight for it to stay at the table, because you'll get told, oh, we're not too sure about that, kaupapa, maybe you should look at a Western framework. So that's the first bit of advice I would give you. And the second bit of advice is very simple. I want you, if you're going to undertake further study, think about drinking 12 cups of coffee a day. And I guess the rest, if you've got a supportive partner, it takes care of itself. The family doesn't see you, day to day, night to night. It just sort of leads into one day after the other. But it is really, really worth it. At the end of the day, I think not only in terms of your tohu, but what you can give back to your community. And I think for me, that's been the biggest thing for me, is what I've been able to give back. Yeah, but yet, you learn to live with it, put it that way. But if you want it badly enough, you'll go after it. Answer your question? Kia ora.
My name is Jay McLaren Harris. Jay McLaren Harris from Tumiki Enterprise. My question is, as a rangatahi myself, I left high school last year. As a rangatahi who's gone through kapahaka, gone through manu kōrero, and the typical Māori things that students go through, what would your advice be to teachers that they can give to their rangatahi who maybe aren't as sure as what they want to do in terms of after-school care? Because one of the things that I found really helpful when I was in kura was that my teachers always supported me, whether that be kapahaka, whether that be manu kōrero, etc. And so I think it gets to a point where teachers actually play a critical role in a rangatahi's life, not just at school and education, but in their life. So I guess what would your advice be to teachers that they can share with their rangatahi? Kia ora.
In my head is self-belief, your belief as a Māori person, as a Māori teacher, your strength to be able to stand up to, work with, collaborate. Gee, I hate the word collaborate, by the way. Makes me think of the war when they collaborated with the Nazis. Anyway, it's a trendy word at the moment. And collaborating with your colleagues. And sometimes if they are really onto it with you, they will recognize that and support you and support that child. That sounds really slack. For me, I usually like something to fight about. And so the fights that I've had, and you have to have the fights. If you're challenged on anything, you have to develop whatever. This is how we do it. But you've got to have the faith in yourself, that you're going to do it anyway. I take kids on a march, and you get told off after, but then, it's easier to do it and then get told off after. Gee, I'm bad influencing. But, to your question, though, is that those teachers, which I used to say to my teachers, you need to recognize that this kid needs to be out. This Ngaitahu kid needs to go to the mutton birding. They're going to be away for 3 months. So set their work. That's part of it. They're learning, but they're away from school. They're absent. So we have to have the strength. Don't want to stand up here and preach, but you have to have the strength. And if you're, and we all go through it, and if you're soft now, you still, how do you say the word, kowtoing to authority. You need to get through that. Yeah, you got some theory of that, girl?
I was just going to say, for many Māori students, you'll often get teachers who will say, oh, you can't do that. That's impossible. Oh, you haven't got the grades or this and that. But I think as kaiako, it's about believing in them no matter what. I remember I had a young man, he's now number 8 for the Hurricanes, and he had a teacher tell him, when he said he was going to be an All Black one day, she said, you'll never amount to nothing. And I think it's that kind of attitude it's in our schools. It's really bad. And so I think as a kaiako, its advice would be, believe in them no matter what. If they want to be an astronaut, well, support them to be an astronaut. Are there any after-school science classes going? Are there any after-math science classes going if they need the extra support? So, yeah, just support them 150% and find those avenues where they can get that tautoko. And I think the most important thing is to never ever give up on them, because that boy is now, he's signed for Wales and he's got a contract, I think, for the next 3 years, and he's going to make more money, 3 times as much more money than the teacher who told him that he was going to amount to nothing. Blade Thompson.
Would you believe this one? A similar story to that is that one of my boys in our whānau a few years ago, good at rugby league, haere mai ngā selectors by Yahi Trade and selected him, and he was one of my key people. And he came to me and he said, "Why?" He said, they come and ask you for help with their decisions. He said, "Look, I've been selected with this, what should I do?" And I said, because I wanted him for my haka and all that. And I said to him, "Haka will always be here, my boy. You go and you take the opportunity." Yeah. And so that's some of the choices, the sort of things you talk about. So, yeah, he ended, sad ending to that story, but however, yeah, kia ora tata.
E tama, ki te whakarongo atu ki a koe, e ki te nau he te tikanga I māmā I te tautoko I a koe. The thing about self-confidence, that teachers can give you that, but you have to make it work. And you're already displaying the fact that, you're well capable of that. And that's more the battle than anything else. No, I don't have any stories of great success or told not to be, you're too useless to be this, or you're too male to be that, because most of the time it was true. But nevertheless, the one thing I do thrive on is new experience. And some Pākehā say that's because I'm a Gemini, not because I'm a Māori, but, I just like new things. And not so long ago, as you can see with this beard thing, I went 18 years with no hair. And when they said to me, we think we want to cast you in a musical, I said, I'll grow it. And so here I am, waiting to be cast in a musical. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I think I can do it. And then the rest will just have to follow. I might turn out to be the worst person they ever picked, and they were right. But hey, it's the experience of. The other thing I think is, if you're advising people, that you've risen to the top of the tree when you've gotten to school, then you're going to go back to the bottom of the tree again, and that you don't have to be in a hurry, because the next 10 years of your life is you doing the things that'll prepare you or make you what you will become. What you will become is not going to happen right now. That's another work, another climb, another tree you got to get on top of. And sometimes that experience kills our kids, because they've gone up there and then all of a sudden you're way back down here again. The struggle up again is, it's not progressive enough. You got to see that is part of the progression. And then more here now, ko ki te ke koe. I often wonder as to the value of the competition, the competitive side of things that you talked about, because for every winner of a korimako, or ngā whai kōrero, there were usually about 39 people who didn't. Ne. And everybody remembers who won, nobody remembers who came second, except the fellow who came second. Ne. You always carry that other fellow's picture, because I came second a few times. And I carried that fellow's picture in my mind, and I said to myself, I don't think so. But there you go. And ka noho koe, ka whakaaro koe to the value of those things, and you can always jump one side or the other, especially if it's your mokopuna who came second. You know, it becomes very, very hard. But hey, I think it's valid that you raised the question, and it's one of the experiences of people pēnā ia koe. And pēnā ia tātou tamariki. I suppose at the end of it, it's the joy of learning, as Phyllis has already alluded to. If our children left knowing how to learn, then I think education has been a great journey. The ngā tohu is just added gravy. It's just that want to learn more every time and how to do that. Koira, that's the achievement, to me, is that willingness to keep learning. And nobody imbues that better than good teachers. Koira te mahi a ngā kura mahi ta pai. They leave us with a willingness to keep learning. And you will get it in the end. Tēnā koutou.
So kia ora, so I'm Rohina Tīpuna. I'm from Ngāti Porou and I teach at Forest View High School in Tukuroa. So I've had a really great conference already. This is my 4th year coming in a row, and I feel like this year we've really stepped it up in terms of the workshops and the presenters and the calibre of the teachers that we've got coming. So it's really good to see a lot of new teachers and a lot of new presenters, so it's new ideas, and it's all about leadership. And I really enjoyed the kōrero on how important kapahaka is and ngā manu kōrero and these avenues that we use for our rangatira, and just being able to use that to inspire them and, you know, create something great. So I'm enjoying it. So there's an 18-year-old boy called Jay, he's from Tukuroa. He originally came from Dargaville, and he was just talking about how he used the ngā manu kōrero as a stepping stone into his career and his business. So he's only 18 and he's touring New Zealand, going into schools and teaching businesses how to manage their staff and that type of leadership, and I think it's just quite inspiring, and I'd love for him to come to my kura and teach my kids that, you know, there's something else and that there's something you can go to afterwards. I also went to the Webster brothers and their presentation, and it was all about how kapahaka's taken them all around the world, that connecting to the world, and how our culture is so appreciated in a different country, and how you can go so many places and teach the kids all this awesome culture, and, you know, just really get them to appreciate what we've got here and what we can do. So yeah, it's been, and Maroya Jensen, she did a great one on games and how to make interactive activities with the students in your classes, and this applies to any topic class, any subject. So this is the kind of conference that it's not just for Māori. You can come if you teach any subject. So I actually teach English and learning support, and I use all the strategies that I learn here in my mainstream classes, and it's just great.
Kia ora, my name is Jay McLaren Harris. I'm the founder and CEO of Motuhake Enterprise Limited. I hail from the great tribe of Ngāpui up north. So look, it's really great to be here today and to talk about my kaupapa. Yeah, so Motuhake Enterprise Limited is a new startup that we started 6 months ago, fresh out of high school. So we're in high school, side skip university, went straight into business. And as you can see, this banner here is a new kaupapa that we're working on, the More Māori and Pacifica in Business Forum. Basically, it encourages more Māori and Pacifica in business. And it surrounds 200 young people with top business, cultural, community and political leaders, basically to learn from and engage with and get their knowledge to put their dreams, their business, or even a project that they have into action.
I'm a teacher at Central Hawke's Bay College, but this year I'm currently learning Te Reo Māori, full immersion in Motuhake. The reason why I come to them often is to be able to meet other kaiako, to learn from the guest speakers, and this year specifically to try and improve my Te Reo Māori. However, when I first walked in the door yesterday, I thought, right, I need to practice my reo, so I went up and just asked a person I didn't know a question in Māori, and she spoke to me in Māori, so I was like having to think about the words she was using and try and figure out exactly what she was saying.
This conference, a lot of people come in looking for answers to the problems that are out there in their kura, in their kreihe, trying to lift pikiake, the success rate, the levels, the achievement of our tamariki mokopuna. The hope is that when they leave, there'll be lots of taonga, lots of little bits they can put in their kete, in their basket, and that'll help them to achieve the results that they want back in their own rohe. If you want whakairo, you go to kava. If you want waiata, if you want whai kōrero, you go to those experts in those fields. You might get turned down once, twice, even thrice. But the measure of somebody who wants to succeed and for those around them to achieve is how many times do you keep going back until you get what you want. Ne.
Tēnā koutou, e mātakitaki ana ki tēnei o ngā kiriata. Ko James Webster hoi, ke tōku taha nei, ko taku tuakana, Kimiora Webster. He tumuaki ia, he kaioko au, ke te kura o raukura, te tamatāne o Rotorua, e mihi ko ati kia te katoa.
Kia ora.
He tumuaki ia mō te whānau Apanui Area School.
Nui, te kura o te whānau Apanui.
Oh, you should have said that your first one. Okay, so yeah, brother love.
Highlights of the conference.
So the highlights of the conference is ko te tino kaupapa, ko te tui and just the thread that's been coming through, or sort of the common theme at the moment for the speakers thus far, is raukura. Rotorua boy, hey, honest. Yeah. It's just been a thread that's been coming through all the way, well, us as speakers as well from yesterday. And then we had our auntie and uncle speak today, Dr. Phil and Craig Callahan, and they all spoke, and we all spoke about our experiences of coming through Rotorua Boys High, and we just had a wonderful lady, Mere Berryman, who just spoke about many pedagogies, but also just showed a small extract or a small film in one of the past head boys, Rawiri Manly, and how he spoke about his journey through education as well. The driving force for myself, I think it's about appreciating who we are and appreciating our stories and taking all those values and applying it to your own life, and understanding it, because we've been brought, we have the school policies and the educational system that says, this is what it is. But when you then marry it and you bridge the gap with mātauranga Māori, it just creates you another avenue. So you look at things differently, different perspectives, you have a more lateral view on the world instead of a literal one.
Yeah, I think it's about leadership too. Having the right leadership. So, Chris Grinter has been a major part of the team and how the ideologies that are carried at the kura. He's the one that, with the vision, and we're the people that implemented the vision into the kura. So it's an important role to work collaboratively in a kura auraki to make Māori students want to achieve as Māori.
Kia ora, ko Nolin te rere tuku ingoa, he kaiako Māori no te kura tuarua o Ritana. My thoughts on our conference this year has been awesome. What I liked about it was the connections that we as Māori teachers have in regards to success with our tamariki. The speakers were very relevant to where we are as practitioners at the moment, and I recommend that all Māori teachers should attend our Māori Teachers Conference. Kia ora. My highlight here was seeing a fellow student that I went to school with. Her name is Dr. Phyllis Callahan, who was my head girl at Warra College, and seeing her now practicing what she preaches and believing in our tamariki and in the system that we are in today as being Māori. Kia ora.
Look, can I just say one thing, and that is, as rangatahi, we're in a position, like I said earlier, where there are opportunities left, right and centre. And it's our job as, I guess, the rangatahi in these programs to reach out and get those others who aren't in the programs to come say, haere mai, come and learn what we learn. Because I tell you, not every 18-year-old is the CEO of an organisation. So it's our job to give back and to surround them with our knowledge. So yeah, kei te pai.
Yeah, for me, it's I think it's inspiration. You know, Māori need to come and work, come together to work collaboratively so that it cuts down isolation and different kura around the motu. We as Māori, kaiako carry a heavy burden of making sure that one, Māori are achieving in our school, and because if they're not, the Māori community of that kura blames it on the Māori teacher. So that's one thing that so throughout the whole term, or throughout the whole teaching time, we're burdened with making sure that Māori are achieving in our school. But in order for us to make them achieve, we need to go to places to look for inspiration to cut down the isolation for us as Māori teachers. The second one for me is networking, so being able to network and share best practice with other like-minded kaiako. So coming to a place where there's a concentrated amount of Māori kaiako where we can network and share ideas, or even just have downtime with each other, is good for the rebooting of our own system before the third term comes along. So yeah, those are my two words: is inspiration and collaboration.
In a nutshell, don't give up. Take the kicks, take the punches, keep on going. At the end, there's a rainbow, there's a pot of gold, and it's the smile on those tamariki when they're finally out being successful in that area that you always dream for them, and they always dream for themselves. It's always good to see Simon McLeod with his kapahaka up in Whanau-Apanui area, Jeffrey Duha, e kaiako, and also kapahaka tutor now, Dane Hollis, outstanding kaiako, and graduate of Panikiritanga and taking the reo to another level. The list goes on. Eru Brown, Boiri Tenahu, Tāmoko artists, Tamanei Tūhau, amazing kai whakairo, and digital whiz, Harley Roberts, amazing work he produces. He takes the whakairo and he turns it into music. Era momo tamane. Kia ora.